Ring their bell. Attorney General Jerry Brown is filing suit against overpaid officials from the city of Bell. Not only does he want them out of office for good, he wants payback. Literally, he wants them to pay back their salaries. Forget Crown Jewel. The LAUSD's Crown School. $578 million, and they opened their doors to students on Monday. Our guest took a look inside. Could it really be worth more than $500 million? And march across America, 12-year-old Zach Bonner walked 2,500 miles from Tampa, Florida to Santa Monica. Why do you hear why he did it? Zach will tell us for himself. All the stories that have people walking and talking right now on The Filter. Hello again off the top, The Filter Forefront. Our top four of the day, including put down that drink. It's making you look stupid. But we'll begin with this. If somebody comes to this country illegally, think they should have the chance to earn a legal citizenship? Think going to school is enough to earn that citizenship? Might be. Called the DREAM Act, but opponents call it a nightmare. Co-sponsored by Santa Ana Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez, the DREAM Act would give college students that are in this country illegally the chance to become U.S. citizens. Finish 2 years of college or military service, you'd be free to apply for legal status. The bill's been around since 2000, but has faced plenty of opposition. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid said he'll bring the DREAM Act to the Senate floor next week. Our contributors tonight, the editor of Turner's 2 Cents, Cameron Turner, and from ReaganBaby.com, Megan Barth. Our pictures are furnished by Skype. Pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants. Megan, will begin with you. Dream or nightmare?
Well, I think it could be a little bit of both. And the reason I say that is I don't understand why this act, the DREAM Act, can't stand on its own merits in Congress. I don't understand why it has to be piggybacked on the back of a defense appropriations bill. I find that this is a political move by Harry Reid of the Democratic Party, and I find it unfortunate that the merits of this bill cannot stand on its own. The public deserves to know exactly what's in this bill, and the Congress has every right, as representatives of the public, to debate this bill on the floor.
Well, Megan, this bill means an awful lot to the state of California, given the number of illegal immigrants that are here. Do you think they should be allowed to stay? It's yes or no?
Well, I don't think that answer would be crystal clear. I do think that there are certain provisions in the DREAM Act that, in theory, are very good. It's allowing students that are assimilating to American culture, American education, that want to better themselves and become productive citizens in this society. It gives them a chance to become legal citizens. That's great. However, there are certain provisions in the bill that allow students up to the age of 35. This is a step towards amnesty. If we're going to talk about amnesty, whether it's in the DREAM Act or whether it's an amnesty at a broader scale, it needs to be a bill that is not piggybacked on another bill in Congress. It needs to stand alone and stand on its own merits.
All right, let me jump in. Cameron, you got about 45 seconds. What do you think?
Well, I think that this is a great opportunity. One of the unfair stereotypes against undocumented people is that they're a drag on social services, that they're criminal. Here we're talking about folks who have come to the United States. This bill applies to people who came to the U.S. as children, younger than 16, and they have lived their lives, all of their lives, worked hard, advanced themselves through school. They certainly demonstrated that they are productive members of our society. They have contributed through their academic excellence, through their community involvement, and now poised to graduate college. I simply see no social benefit, no social need to yank away from them the opportunity to graduate college. So graduating college, path to citizenship, I see absolutely no problem with that. We're talking about folks who will become very productive members of this society, contribute to building this economy, and I think the DREAM Act is a great idea, and I hope it goes through.
All right, well, it'll be on the Senate floor next week.
I think if it's a great idea, it should stand on its own merits.
Okay, let's move on. Jerry Brown wants to be governor of California, but it doesn't matter how much campaigning he does, how much money he spends on political ads. For some, he made the biggest splash he could by going into the city of Bell and sounding the alarm. Today, the Attorney General filed a lawsuit asking for a court order demanding officials in Bell vacate their positions. But Brown didn't stop there. He wants former city manager Robert Rizzo and several other city officials to make restitution for their excessive salaries, saying they committed fraud against their constituents. Many in the city of Bell are calling it justice at last. But the question remains here. What price must they pay? Should officials in Bell be forced to repay residents for their excessive salaries, Cameron?
Absolutely. Absolutely, they should be forced to pay. You know, I still remember what Robert Rizzo, the city manager, said in the LA Times back before the scandal blew wide open. And he said, well, if people are complaining about my salary, then maybe I'm in the wrong business. Well, Mr. Rizzo, you were never in business, sir. You are in public service. And as such, it is your responsibility to serve the interests of the constituents, the people in the city of Bell. That is every political elected official's responsibility. These folks in Bell absolutely ransacked that community, and they should certainly be made to pay the money back. This is by no means a political stunt on the part of Jerry Brown. The Attorney General, Mr. Brown, is doing exactly what he is supposed to do as Attorney General, and I applaud him for it, and I think that every one of those folks, from the city manager on down, who voted themselves these exorbitant salaries, ought to pay every dime of that back.
All right, Megan,
and they ought to be glad they aren't going to jail.
Well, and they may go to jail, but should they have to pay back the citizens, Megan?
Absolutely. You know, this just reminds me of Bernie Madoff or Bernie Ebbers, for that matter, with MCI. They defrauded their investors of millions and millions of dollars. Bernie Madoff was sent to jail. Bernie Ebbers was sent to jail. I don't see the difference between that type of fraud, which is corporate fraud, and public fraud or embezzlement. They took every opportunity to bilk the taxpayers, the 38,000 taxpayers of Bell, in order to inflate their salaries. They hid their salaries in documents. They did not, I just saw on the news today, they had old documents that supposedly showed that they only made $173 a month, or the Rizzo showed that he only made $173,000, something of that effect. It was a complete fraud on the taxpayer. They've also found some perhaps voter fraud, and you have the DOJ now, the Department of Justice, investigating. This was a fraud perpetuated on the backs of the taxpayers, and they should be treated no differently than any CEO of a corporation in the private industry, and they should be sent to jail. And Jerry Brown is doing his job and is doing the right thing.
All right, well, let's find out how people will be treated if they commit this crime. In January of 2009, California became one of the first states in the country to ban text messaging while driving. Clearly, apparently, the rules are made to be broken. A new survey reveals that twice as many drivers are texting behind the wheel compared to last January. And frankly, those numbers probably won't go down anytime soon. Why? Well, the law won't hurt you much if you get caught. $20 fine for the first offense and no point on your driving record. A bill to strengthen the law was recently defeated. We all know that texting while driving is very dangerous. What, if anything, should be done to curb the habit? What would make people stop texting from behind the wheel, Megan?
You know, no matter how much regulation you put on people is not necessarily going to change behavior. What does come to mind, however, is the DUI, for example. DUI laws originally used to have different levels of acceptance. I think it was 0.1 or 0.11, and now it's 0.08. And the levels of fine have increased in accordance with how long that law has been on the books. It became a very expensive penalty if you were caught driving under the influence. Now, this is texting. If texting is just as dangerous as driving under the influence and causes just as many accidents or could cause accidents, then I think what we have to do is probably increase the fines. I don't know if we need more regulations or laws, but it's definitely, I think fines would get somebody's attention. I know it would get my attention.
Yep.
I stopped texting when I was while driving when I honestly was texting and nearly got into an accident. And I said, you know what, that's enough. People have to really understand that texting is not what you're supposed to be doing in your car. You're supposed to be driving and paying attention.
Well,
if
you're not watching the road or you're not watching in front of you, you can kill yourself or you can kill somebody. Cameron, what do you think?
You're not driving if you're not watching the road.
Right, right. Good point. Cameron?
Yeah, well, the tragedy is that when you talk about the attempt to make this law stricter was struck down. The tragedy is that it will take something horrible, like a death, or the death of a child or an elderly person in particular, to sort of shake up the state. And then there will be a push to make the laws tougher. We saw the same thing happen in the 80s with when Mothers Against Drunk Driving came out and really pushed for making tougher laws there. It shouldn't come to that. We all know that there is ample evidence that texting and cell phone conversation while we're driving makes no sense and is extremely dangerous. We've got to put teeth into these laws because clearly if the numbers of people texting has doubled since the law went into effect, clearly people are scoffing at the law, and we need to make the rules tougher now before something horrible happens, and then we're all shocked into some sort of realization.
I think that's a great way to button that one up. Okay, last one. You've seen all the alcohol commercials, haven't you? Drinking a beer makes you look sexy, makes you look desirable to the opposite sex. It doesn't? It's actually the opposite? Well, you've seen all the alcohol commercials. Drinking a beer makes you look sexy, makes you look desirable to the opposite sex. Well, not necessarily, my friends. According to a working study at 2 major universities, drinking is bad for your image. Oh, but it gets worse. Simply holding a drink makes you look dumber than you are. That's what the study said. It asked people to judge pictures of men and women holding alcoholic drinks against pictures with non-alcoholic drinkers. Those with the alcohol were judged to be less intelligent, less desirable, less appealing. Does holding a drink at a cocktail party make you look dumb, Cameron?
Well, I think it speaks to how the image of alcohol and the place of alcohol in our society has changed. You know, these days we've reached a point where our associations with alcohol are almost universally negative and contemptible. You know, we think of the rowdy guys out at the stadium or the ballpark or college kids binging out. And then all these reckless, embarrassing celebrities like Snooki and Lindsay Lohan stumbling out of the bars and vomiting in public in front of the paparazzi. And then there are the hip-hop guys, you know, guzzling champagne and vodka in the videos and in real life while they make it rain at the strip club. What we have lost is the concept of elegant drinking that is refined and that shows appreciation to the artistry of wine and spirits and even of beer. And so that is part, I think, of a general vanishing of gentility and manners and higher respectable culture generally. So I think that the study makes sense because at this point, we don't even think of sipping a glass of wine as an elegant act. We think of it as the first road to getting plastered.
Megan, what do you think? Is sipping a glass of wine an elegant act, or are you just out to get plastered?
Well, I want to know how many blondes were in this study because, you know, as a blonde, there are multiple stereotypes that people think that someone's less intelligent than another person. So, you know, as a blonde or as a female, I might get it more than as a brunette female or a brunette male. But I think Cameron has a very good point in the fact that a lot of the imagery that we've seen associated with alcohol has to do with negativity. And one of the rules that I was always taught when trying to find a job or interviewing for a job in my early career was if you go out for a business... Be drunk the
entire time.
Exactly.
Be drunk the entire time.
I mean, you want to be the life of the party, right? But no, it was you never drink in front of a potential boss or a potential client or things like that. It just comes down to basic etiquette, basic manners, and that's just something that has to be practiced a little bit more than, you know, the craziness, so...
All right.
And why people drink, it goes to that, too. You know, Jack Daniels is fine whiskey. It's not, you know, some cheap swill to get drunk off of. And yet, one of the most popular pop artists right now, Kesha, rose to the top of the charts with a record where she says, I jump out of bed and brush my teeth with a bottle of Jack. See, you're demeaning the actual substance itself and taking it into a level where it can't be respected, and you can't help but look dumb if you're doing it.
Well, I think.
Well, you can probably. I'm sorry, but you can probably rhyme a lot of things with Jack.
All right. Well, listen. I think you took the conversation to a very nice level tonight, Cameron and Megan. Thank you both very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Good night.